The blade glowed with a sharp blue light, its edge humming in the silent air. The alien warrior stood tall, her silver armor reflecting the fire torches that lit the great hall. Her eyes, narrow and cold, locked on the human who knelt before her. The crowd of alien soldiers pressed closer, waiting to see another quick execution. The human did not look afraid. His face was calm, almost amused. A small smirk played on his lips. It was strange. The aliens expected begging, fear, maybe even tears, but this man gave them nothing. He only watched the warrior as if studying her every move. "Any last words, human?" The alien warrior asked. Her voice was sharp, echoing through the hall. She pointed the glowing blade at his chest, ready to strike. The human tilted his head slightly. His eyes went down to the blade, then back to her face. A slow smile spread across his lips. "Yeah," he said calmly. "You're holding it wrong." Gasps filled the hall. No one had ever spoken to the warrior like this, not even her own kind. The alien crowd hissed and laughed, thinking the human foolish, but the warrior narrowed her eyes. Her grip tightened on the weapon. The human's mind was calm, but behind his eyes his thoughts raced. He remembered how he ended up here. It had all started 3 days ago when the alien patrols stormed the ruins where he had been hiding. They dragged him into their city, chains on his wrists. They mocked him, calling him weak and fragile. They threw him into the dirt before their leader, the warrior who now stood above him. She was feared across their worlds. Stories said she had never been defeated. Her duels ended in seconds. Her victims always left in pieces. To her, this human was nothing but entertainment, a small distraction before her next battle. But she did not see what he truly was. He was not only a survivor, he was trained, patient, and observant. While they laughed at him, he studied them. Every weapon, every stance, every mistake. He noticed something about the warrior's blade. The way her hand bent, the angle of her wrist, it was powerful. Yes, but unstable. Now as the crowd roared for blood, the human kept his calm. His words echoed again in her head. "You're holding it wrong." The warrior stepped closer, pressing the tip of the blade against his chest. The blue light burned softly against his shirt. "You mock me, human," she growled. "You think you know our weapons better than I do?" The human only smirked. He leaned slightly forward, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. "I know enough to kill you with your own blade." Her face darkened. The crowd shouted with excitement. Some called for her to strike at once. Others laughed, eager to see the human cut down for his arrogance. But deep inside, a small spark of doubt touched the warrior's mind. The human remembered the chains, the mockery, the jeers of the soldiers. He remembered the hours in the cell, watching, listening, waiting. He was not afraid of this warrior. He was curious. How would she react when she realized the truth? "Stand him up," the warrior ordered. Her voice cut through the hall like thunder. 2 guards lifted the human to his feet and shoved him forward. The warrior stepped back, raising her blade high. The duel was about to begin. The alien crowd stomped their feet, chanting her name. The sound shook the walls. The human stood tall. Now no chains, no fear. His hands loose at his sides, his eyes steady. The warrior gave a cruel smile. "You have spirit. I will enjoy breaking it," she said. The human tilted his head. "We'll see," he answered, calm as ever. The silence before the fight stretched long. The air was heavy. Every eye in the hall was fixed on them. The alien warrior with her shining blade, and the human with nothing but his bare hands. But still he smiled, a smile that carried mystery, a smile that made some of the crowd uneasy. They did not know why, but for the first time they wondered, could he be more than he seems? The warrior roared, lifting her blade. Sparks of blue light flew from it. The human whispered softly under his breath, words only he could hear. "Hold it wrong, and you lose." The clash had not yet begun, but already the hall was full of tension. The challenge had been spoken. The game of death was set, and the human was ready. The hall trembled with the echo of the alien crowd. Their chants rose like thunder, demanding blood, demanding a victory they thought was already certain. The warrior's blade hummed with energy as she prepared to strike, but the human only stood there, calm, his eyes fixed on her movements. To the aliens, this was madness. He was a prisoner, a weak outsider with no weapon, yet he did not shake. He did not beg. Instead, he studied, as he had always done. His secret was not strength alone. His secret was knowledge. Long before he was dragged into this hall, the human had learned the art of patience. Back on Earth, in the ruins of war, he had survived against enemies stronger, faster, and better armed. He had learned to read an opponent's stance, their breathing, the tension in their muscles. To him, fighting was not about size or power, it was about mistakes, and mistakes, he knew, were everywhere in his cell. He had been quiet. The guards thought him broken. They laughed at him, tossed scraps of food, mocked him for his thin frame. But every moment he sat in the shadows. His eyes watched, his ears listened. He memorized the sound of alien boots, the click of their weapons, the way their warriors carried themselves. Most of all, he studied their blades. Those glowing weapons were beautiful, deadly, but they had one weakness. A human hand would never hold it that way. The design demanded strength, not control. One wrong twist, and balance would shift, leaving the fighter open. The warrior woman, now holding the blade at him, had no idea that he had already seen through her. The crowd thought they were watching prey before a predator, but in truth, the human was a wolf waiting in silence. The warrior circled him, her golden eyes flashing. "Why do you smile, human?" she hissed. "Do you not see your end is here?" He tilted his head, his smirk unshaken. "I see many things," he answered, "but I don't see my end." The aliens roared with laughter. They slammed their fists against the stone walls. Some spat at the floor, mocking his words, but inside, the warrior felt a small tremor of anger. His calm unnerved her. She wanted to see fear, to taste his panic. Yet it never came. The human's mind drifted back to his training. He remembered the voice of his commander: "Strength will fail you, guns will fail you, but if you can outthink your enemy, you will never fall." Those words had kept him alive through battles, ambushes, and betrayals. And now they would guide him here. The warrior lunged, her blade cut through the air, fast and bright. The crowd cheered, expecting blood, but the human moved, not with strength, but with timing. He stepped aside just enough, feeling the heat of the blade pass by. His eyes locked on her wrist. "Too heavy on the grip," he muttered. Under his breath, the warrior turned sharply, swinging again. But once more he slipped aside. His motions were not grand or flashy. They were small, precise, controlled. Every dodge was another note in the rhythm he had already seen. The aliens stopped laughing. Their cheers slowed. Confusion rippled through the hall. How was he still alive? How was he avoiding her? The warrior's breath grew heavier, her strikes faster, angrier. Yet every swing left her a little more open, a little less balanced. The human's eyes glimmered with quiet satisfaction. "You think you are strong," he said, dodging another strike. "But strength is nothing without control." His voice was calm, almost like a teacher correcting a student. The words stung. The warrior roared in fury. The human stepped back, his heart steady. He knew he could not win with power, not yet. But he had already won the first battle, the battle of patience. The crowd began to sense it too. Their cheers turned to whispers, their laughter turned to uneasy silence. The human's secret was not only skill, it was understanding. He saw the fight not as a storm of violence, but as a puzzle, every piece falling into place, every mistake adding to his advantage. He remembered another lesson from Earth: if they think you are weak, let them believe it. Their arrogance will open the door, and so he had let them mock him, chain him, drag him into this hall. He had played the part of the helpless prisoner, all while waiting for this very moment. The warrior lunged again, her blade flashing dangerously close. The human leaned just enough, letting the light kiss the air near his cheek. Then he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Wrong stance again." Her eyes widened with anger. Her strikes grew reckless, each one faster but less precise. The human's calm presence was unraveling her confidence. The alien crowd no longer cheered. They leaned forward in disbelief. For the first time, they wondered if their champion might bleed. The human smiled faintly, not out of arrogance, but certainty. He had seen this before. He had lived this before, and he knew how it ended. He whispered again, "Your mistake is my victory." The duel was far from over, but already the tide had begun to shift, and the human secret was now unfolding. For all to see. The hall had fallen into a heavy silence. The aliens who once roared with laughter now leaned forward in disbelief. Their champion, the undefeated warrior, was striking again and again, but the human kept slipping past her blade. His movements were not loud or wild, but sharp, fast, and precise. The warrior's eyes burned with anger. Her blade hummed louder as she swung with even greater force. Sparks flew each time the glowing weapon clashed against the stone floor or scraped the air near the human's body. The sound filled the chamber like thunder, but still, he was calm. His heart did not race. His breathing stayed steady. Each step he took was measured. His eyes tracked every small detail, the shift of her feet, the rise of her shoulders, the strain in her wrist. She attacked with fury, but he saw patterns. He had always been a man of patterns to him. Her rage was not chaos, it was a map. And every map led to an opening. The aliens shouted, "Kill him, finish it." Their voices echoed, their fists pounded against the walls. But doubt grew in their hearts. For the first time, their champion looked like she was fighting an equal, not prey. The warrior lunged again. Her blade cut downward in a strike meant to end the fight. The human twisted to the side, the edge of the weapon passing dangerously close. He grabbed a loose stone from the floor and tossed it against the base of her blade. The sound rang sharp, the weapon's hum flickering for a moment. She snarled, "Tricks will not save you, human." But the human only smiled. "Not tricks," he said softly. "Lessons." The warrior swung again. Faster this time. Each strike was quicker, heavier. Her strength was beyond human limits. Her speed a blur, yet the human met her fury with timing. His feet moved with them, like a dance he already knew. The crowd gasped when he ducked under a slash, rolled, and rose back to his feet unharmed. The warrior growled, her face twisting with rage. No one had ever lasted this long against her. "You mock me," she spat, slashing again. "You dare mock me in front of my people." The human tilted his head, his smirk returning. "I'm not mocking you," he replied calmly. "I'm teaching you." The words cut deeper than any blade. The warrior's strikes grew reckless, faster, desperate. She wanted his blood. She wanted his silence, but the human only moved smoother. Each mistake she made was another window, another chance. He dodged a strike and whispered, "Grip too tight." He avoided another and said, "Foot too wide." The crowd no longer laughed. Their eyes widened with unease. They could see what was happening. Their champion, their legend, was losing her balance. The warrior roared, bringing her blade down with all her strength. The human stepped close instead of back. His hand brushed against the hilt for the briefest second, and he shoved her wrist aside. The blade slammed into the floor, cracking the stone. The crowd gasped in shock. For a heartbeat, the human stood right before her, his face inches from hers. His voice low, holding it wrong. She shoved him back, fury in her eyes. She raised her blade again, but her breath came faster now. Sweat beaded on her brow. Her strikes had power, but no longer had precision. The human raised his fists, not with fear, but with confidence. His stance was small, efficient, controlled. Every line of his body spoke of discipline. The crowd could no longer deny it. This was no weak prisoner. This was no fragile outsider. This was a warrior. The duel became a storm of sparks. Each swing of her blade clashed with the air. The floor, the walls. Each dodge of the human made the crowd cry out in disbelief. The hall became alive with energy, tension, and shock. The warrior's fury grew until it blinded her. Her strikes lost all rhythm. She was strength without control, power without focus, and the human, calm as ever, saw his chance. She lunged with a heavy swing, her blade slicing through the air. The human sidestepped, grabbed her wrist, and twisted. Her hand faltered. The blade slipped, and for the first time, it clattered against the floor. The hall went silent. No one had ever seen her disarmed. The warrior froze, her golden eyes wide. The human bent, picked up the weapon, and turned it in his hands with ease. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Like I said," he whispered, "you're holding it wrong." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in disbelief, others in rage. The warrior stood frozen, shame burning in her chest. Her legend had been cracked, and all by a single human. The human lowered the blade slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. He did not strike, not yet. His calm silence spoke louder than any victory. The clash of steel had ended, but the true battle had only just begun. The silence in the hall was heavy. It pressed against every chest, even. The air seemed to freeze. The warrior had been disarmed, something no alien in the crowd had ever witnessed. The glowing blade lay in the human's hands, its blue light reflecting in his calm eyes. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some shouted in rage, others in disbelief. The alien soldiers stomped their feet, their voices clashing together like thunder. But through the storm of noise, the human stood still, holding the weapon with ease. The warrior's chest rose and fell, her breaths sharp and uneven. Her golden eyes burned with shame. Her fingers twitched, as if reaching for a blade that was no longer hers. Never before had she been stripped of her weapon. Never before had she been humbled before her people. The human tilted the blade in his hands, testing its weight. He turned it once, then let it rest against his side. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "This weapon is powerful, but only if you understand it." The crowd hushed, leaning in. They could not believe the human dared speak so boldly. The warrior snarled, stepping forward. Her pride would not let her yield. She raised her empty fists. "You think this proves anything?" she spat. "You think this fight is over?" The human smirk deepened. "No," he said. "This fight is only beginning." She roared and lunged at him barehanded. Her speed was still fierce, her strength still monstrous. She swung with her fists. Each strike meant to crush, to kill. The crowd cheered wildly, but the human, blade in hand, moved with precision. He did not slash or stab. Instead, he used the weapon like a mirror to her mistakes, deflecting her strikes, sidestepping her fury. Every miss made her angrier. Every dodge pushed her further into rage. The human whispered with each move, "Too high, too slow, too wide." The crowd began to murmur. They could see it now. Their champion was losing not because of his strength, but because of her weakness. The warrior's fury turned desperate. She dove for the blade, but the human stepped back, spinning it in his grip. For a moment he held it like one of their own, but his stance was different, balanced, firm. The weapon looked more natural in his hands than in hers. Gasps spread through the hall. The aliens whispered among themselves. Some even pointed. Their eyes betrayed fear. The warrior's breaths came in ragged bursts. Sweat dripped from her brow. She had never fought this long, never struggled like this. Her strength had always ended fights before they began, but now her strength meant nothing. The human lowered the blade slightly. "You rely too much on power," he said calmly. "Skill beats strength, balance beats fury." Her teeth clenched, shame twisting in her chest. She had been their symbol of power, their undefeated warrior, and here, in front of all, a single human had stripped that away. She charged again, but the human was ready. His movements were sharp, efficient. He turned her momentum against her, letting her weight drive her forward. And with one precise twist, he brought her crashing to the floor. The hall shook with cries of shock. Some shouted for her to rise. Others demanded her blood. The human stood above her, blade in hand. His shadow fell across her as she struggled to push herself up. He looked down at her with calm eyes, not with hate, not with arrogance, but with certainty. "You wanted a fight," he said quietly. "Now you have one." The warrior's pride screamed within her. She rose again, her fists trembling. She refused to yield. Even beaten, even disarmed, she would not bow. But the crowd was changing. They were no longer cheering for her victory. They were staring at the human, whispering about his skill, his calm, his defiance. The human turned his eyes to them, his voice firm. "Do you see now? Do you see what happens when you underestimate a human?" The hall fell silent again. For the first time, fear rippled through them. Fear not of the warrior, but of the man who now stood in her place. The warrior lunged once more, desperate to restore her honor. But the human moved faster. His blade swept low, knocking her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, the sound echoing across the chamber. The human placed the glowing blade against her throat. The blue light hummed dangerously close to her skin. The crowd held its breath. Time itself seemed to pause. The warrior froze, her pride crushed beneath the cold reality of defeat. The human looked into her eyes, his voice low but sharp. "I told you. You're holding it wrong." Gasps erupted across the hall. The crowd's whispers turned into stunned silence. Their champion was at his mercy. The tide had turned. The human now stood not as a prisoner, not as prey, but as the master of the fight. The warrior lay on the ground, her chest heaving, the glowing blade pressed against her throat. The crowd of aliens stared in shock. Their champion had never fallen before, yet here she was, trembling beneath the hand of a human. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the blade. The human's eyes were calm, sharp, his grip steady. He was not breathing heavily like her. His movements had been efficient, controlled. He had saved his strength for the right moment. The warrior clenched her jaw, shame burning in her chest. She wanted to rise, to keep fighting. But the blade's light against her neck reminded her of the truth. For the first time, she felt the sting of true defeat. The crowd shouted now, some demanding her death, others roaring for the human's blood. The great hall shook with their voices, but the human ignored them. His eyes were only on the warrior. "You were never beaten before," he said softly, "because no one dared to see your mistakes." She snarled, "And you think you have seen them all?" His smirk returned. "Not think," he answered. "No." The words cut deeper than the blade, for in his eyes there was no doubt. He spoke as one who had lived through battles far greater than this. The human's mind drifted back for a moment. Back to Earth, to the shadows of his past. He remembered the war that had torn his home apart. He remembered the training, harsh, merciless, unending. He had been shaped not only as a soldier, but as a survivor. His instructors had drilled into him the art of patience, the science of combat, the skill of adaptation. He was not an ordinary man. He was part of a unit known by whispers, trained for missions where survival seemed impossible. They were taught not only to fight with weapons, but to turn the enemy's strength into weakness, to use knowledge as their sharpest blade. And here, in this alien hall, those lessons returned. Every breath, every move, every calculation, all of it guided him now. The warrior forced herself to rise to her knees. Her pride refused to let her remain flat on the ground. She stared up at him, her golden eyes blazing with defiance. "Kill me then," she spat. "End this and claim your false victory." But the human lowered the blade slightly. His calm expression never wavered. "No," he said. "Killing you proves nothing." The crowd gasped. Never before had anyone dared to show mercy in the dueling hall. To them, victory meant death. Defeat meant silence forever. But this human broke their code. He stood above their champion and refused to end her. Confusion rippled through the aliens. Was this weakness? Or was it something far more dangerous? The warrior's pride burned hotter. She could not understand him. "Why spare me?" she demanded. "You should take my head, win your glory, earn your freedom." The human shook his head slowly, his voice steady. "Glory means nothing," he said. "Control means everything." The word sent a shiver through her. For the first time, she began to see the truth. He had not survived this long because of luck. He had not fought her to mock her. He had fought to reveal something, not only about her, but about himself. The human raised the blade again. But instead of striking, he spun it in his grip. He held it differently from the aliens, balanced, precise. The weapon hummed brighter, almost as if it had been waiting for this hand. The crowd gasped again. Some shouted that it was impossible. But their eyes could not lie. In his grip, the weapon looked natural, more steady, more deadly. The warrior's eyes widened. She realized the unthinkable. The human was not only strong, he understood their weapon better than they did. "How?" she whispered, disbelief breaking through her pride. The human stepped back slightly, his voice low. "Because I've fought your kind before." The crowd erupted into chaos. Some denied it, some shouted in fear. But the warrior froze, her heart pounded. Could it be true? Could this man have faced their warriors and lived? The human's eyes darkened with memory. He remembered the old missions, the ambushes in the shadows, the battles where human soldiers had stood against alien raiders and barely survived. He remembered studying their weapons, their tactics, their arrogance. Each time, the humans had adapted. Each time they had endured. Now he stood here not as prey, not as a prisoner, but as proof that humans could not be broken so easily. Proof that even the strongest alien warrior could fall to patience, skill and knowledge. The warrior's defiance faltered. Shame and fear clashed in her chest. She looked at him differently now, not as a weak outsider, not as prey, but as something else, something dangerous. The human lowered the blade fully now, his voice carrying across the hall. "I don't need to kill her to win," he declared. "I've already shown you the truth." The crowd hushed. Their whispers echoed like wind through the chamber. The truth they saw was undeniable. Their champion was beaten, and their enemy had shown mercy. That mercy was more terrifying than any blade. The warrior bowed her head, her pride shattered. But her respect awakened. She whispered, "What are you?" The human looked at her, his smirk returning. "I'm human," he said simply, and in that moment, the hall no longer saw a prisoner. They saw something far greater. Asterisk. The warrior's head hung low, the weight of shame heavy on her shoulders. Her people stared in disbelief, whispering, murmuring. Some were angry, some confused, others afraid. The undefeated champion had fallen, and the one standing above her was a man they had once mocked as weak. The human lowered the blade but did not release his focus. His stance remained strong, balanced, unshaken. He stood not as a prisoner, not as prey, but as a warrior. His calm eyes scanned the hall, taking in the faces of the aliens who once laughed at him. Now those same faces looked back with unease. The warrior pushed herself to her feet. Her fists clenched, her breath sharp and uneven. Her pride screamed for her to fight again. She could not let her people see her broken. She could not accept defeat. Her golden eyes locked on the human with burning fury. "You will not leave here alive," she hissed. "Mercy or not, I will not bow to you." The human tilted his head slightly, his smirk never fading. "You already have," he answered calmly. Her rage exploded. She charged at him with bare hands, her speed still terrifying. Her fists flew like thunder. Her strength still great. The crowd cheered again, hoping their champion could rise once more. But the human did not falter. His feet moved with precision. His body shifted with control. He deflected, dodged, sidestepped. His movements were not desperate but certain. He no longer looked like prey fighting for survival. He looked like a master teaching a lesson. The warrior swung wildly, but her strikes were heavy and uncontrolled. The human let her fury burn itself out, step by step, strike by strike, until she was panting, her strength waning. "Strength without discipline is weakness," he said quietly. "You're proving it with every move." Her pride stung, but his words struck deeper because she knew they were true. Her strength had carried her through every duel before, but never had she met an opponent who did not fear her. Never had she met someone who could see through her rage. The human's voice grew firmer, his words carried across the hall. "You think humans are weak because we are smaller, because we lack claws, because we lack your power." His eyes swept across the crowd. But weakness does not mean helplessness. Weakness teaches us to adapt, to endure, to outthink those who rely only on force. The hall fell silent. His words echoed against the stone walls. The aliens listened, even as they tried to deny it. Deep inside they felt the truth. The warrior roared, refusing to yield. She lunged with one last desperate strike, hoping to break him. But the human was ready. He stepped aside, his body moving with the grace of training and instinct. He twisted her arm, turned her momentum against her, and brought her crashing down again. This time, he did not place the blade at her throat. He did not need to. The warrior lay on the ground gasping, beaten not only in body but in spirit. The human stood tall above her, the glowing weapon still in his grip. He raised it high, not to strike, but to show the hall. The blue light washed over the crowd, making their faces pale. "You see this?" he called out, his voice strong. "This blade belongs to your people, but it obeys me because I respect it, I study it, I master it. That is what humans do. We learn, we adapt, and then we stand." The crowd erupted in shouts. Some cried out in anger, others in awe. The sound filled the chamber like a storm. The warrior pushed herself up again. Trembling, her pride refused to stay silent. "I will fight until my last breath," she growled. The human looked at her, his eyes steady. "Then stand," he said. "But know this, you are no longer fighting a prisoner, you are fighting a human who will not kneel." She lunged once more, but her strength betrayed her. Her strike was clumsy, her body weak. The human moved like water, flowing around her. His counter was swift and final. With one motion, he swept her legs and pinned her arm. She cried out in pain, the sound echoing through the hall. The human leaned close, his voice sharp but calm. "This fight is over." The crowd fell silent. Their champion was pinned, her pride shattered, and the human stood unbroken. Slowly, he released her and rose, his figure tall, his presence commanding. He raised the blade again, not as a threat, but as a symbol. The hall shimmered with tension. Every alien eye fixed on him. The human's voice rang clear. "We may look fragile to you. We may seem weak, but when the time comes, we endure, we fight, and we stand tall." His words crashed over them like a wave. The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time, the aliens looked at a human not with scorn, but with fear and respect. The warrior knelt on the ground, her head bowed. She could not rise again. She could not deny what had happened. The human looked down at her, his smirk fading into a steady gaze. "Now you understand," he said quietly, and as he stood tall before them all, the truth settled into the hearts of the crowd. Humans were not weak, they were dangerous. Asterisk. The great hall was silent. The air was heavy, filled with the shock of what had just taken place. The alien warrior, once feared and undefeated, now knelt before the human. Her shoulders shook with exhaustion, her pride shattered, her golden eyes stared at the floor. Refusing to meet the gaze of her people, the human stood above her, tall and calm. The glowing blade still hung in his grip. Its light bathed him in blue fire. His chest rose steady, his face showed no fear. He had entered this place as a prisoner, mocked and underestimated. Now he stood as a victor. The alien crowd murmured in disbelief. Some whispered in anger, refusing to accept the humiliation. Others stared with wide eyes, unable to deny what they had seen. A human had stood against their champion and prevailed. The human raised the blade, not to strike, but to show. His voice rang across the chamber. clear and sharp. You thought me weak because I am human. You saw chains and thought I was broken. You saw small hands and thought I was powerless. He lifted the weapon higher. But you were wrong. The crowd hushed, his words echoing off the stone walls. The human's calm confidence cut deeper than any blade. The warrior slowly lifted her head, her breath heavy, her pride bleeding for the first time. She looked at the human not with scorn, but with something new, respect. She forced herself to speak, her voice trembling. You spared me. The human's eyes locked with hers, steady, unshaken. Killing you would have proven nothing, he said quietly, but showing you the truth changes everything. Her chest tightened. Her entire life she had believed victory came from strength, from crushing those weaker than her. Yet here stood a man who had beaten her without killing. A man who had won not through brute force, but through patience, skill, and control. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some of the younger warriors looked at the human with awe. Their whispers carried fear, but also curiosity. If one human can do this, they muttered, what could an army of them do? The alien leaders sitting on their thrones leaned forward. Their faces were stern, but their eyes betrayed concern. For centuries they had seen humans as lesser, useful only as laborers, slaves, or curiosities. But now, before their very eyes, one man had shattered that belief. The human lowered the blade, letting it hum softly at his side. He stepped closer to the fallen warrior and spoke low. You asked for my last words, he said. But these are not my last. He leaned in, slightly, his smirk returning. These are just the first. Her eyes widened. For the first time in her life, she felt something she never thought possible, fear of a human. The crowd erupted again, this time not in laughter or cheers, but in debate. Some shouted for the human's death. Others demanded his release. Many were silent, unable to look away from the man who now stood as proof that humans were far more than anyone believed. The warrior pushed herself to her knees. She bowed her head, her voice firm, though quiet. You have defeated me, she said. I cannot deny it. Gasps spread through the hall. The champion, the legend, had spoken words of surrender. The people could scarcely believe their ears. The human nodded once, not gloating, not mocking, only accepting. Then rise with your honor, he said calmly, and remember this moment. She rose slowly, her body trembling, her pride scarred. Yet her eyes no longer burned with hatred. They carried something else, respect for the man who had defeated her yet spared her. The human turned his gaze back to the hall. His voice rang strong. Remember this, all of you. Humans do not kneel easily. You may call us weak, but weakness can teach strength. You may call us fragile, but fragility teaches us to endure. He raised the blade once more. And when we endure, we become unstoppable. The words rippled through the crowd, striking them deeper than the fight itself. For they knew the truth. They had seen it with their own eyes. A single human had humbled their greatest warrior. The alien leaders exchanged glances. Their silence told the story. They could no longer dismiss humans so easily. The seed of fear and respect had been planted. The warrior stepped forward, standing beside the human, though her pride still ached. You are dangerous, she said softly. Perhaps more dangerous than we ever imagined, the human smirked. Faintly, or perhaps, he said, you are finally beginning to see us clearly. The crowd trembled with whispers. The balance had shifted. The image of humans as weak and powerless was broken, forever replaced by the sight of one man standing tall with their own blade in his hand. The duel was over, but something greater had begun, a change that no alien in that hall would ever forget. And as the human lowered the glowing weapon and met the eyes of all who stared at him, the truth was clear. Respect had been earned, and the universe would never see humans the same way again. Asterisk.